Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on Speak and Feel English, the place where meaningful conversations help you grow, think deeper, and live better. I'm Mia, and as always, I'm joined by my thoughtful co-host, Ethan. Today, we are diving into a topic that almost everyone struggles with at some point in their life: how to stop overthinking everything. If you have ever stayed awake at night replaying conversations in your head, worrying about decisions you made, or imagining worst-case scenarios about the future, then this conversation is definitely for you.
That's such a relatable topic, Mia. I think overthinking is something many people experience but rarely talk about openly. It's interesting because on the surface, it might seem like thinking deeply is a good thing. After all, thinking carefully about decisions can help us avoid mistakes. But the problem begins when the thinking turns into endless mental loops, where we analyze the same situation again and again without reaching any useful conclusion.
Exactly. Overthinking often disguises itself as productivity. People believe they are solving problems, but in reality, they are just creating more stress and confusion. I remember a time when I would spend hours analyzing a simple message I sent to someone, wondering if I sounded too direct or not friendly enough. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt, even though nothing was actually wrong.
That example is so common. Our minds tend to fill in gaps with assumptions, and unfortunately, those assumptions are often negative. Instead of thinking, everything is probably fine, our brains jump to conclusions like, what if I offended them? Or what if they misunderstood me? That cycle can quickly become exhausting.
And what makes it even more complicated is that overthinking often feels automatic. People don't wake up and decide to worry about everything. It just happens naturally because the brain is trying to protect us from potential problems. In a way, overthinking is the mind's attempt to control uncertainty.
That's a really important point. Our brains evolved to detect threats, and in earlier times, that ability helped humans survive dangerous environments. But today, the threats are usually not physical dangers. Instead, they are social situations, career decisions, or personal expectations. The brain still reacts strongly, even when the situation does not require that level of mental attention.
Yes, and when people start overthinking regularly, it can affect almost every area of life. Decision-making becomes difficult, confidence decreases, and small problems start to feel overwhelming. Instead of moving forward, people stay stuck in analysis.
I like the way you describe that, being stuck in analysis. Sometimes people believe they are preparing for the future by thinking about every possible outcome, but ironically, that habit often prevents them from actually taking action.
Absolutely. Imagine someone who wants to start a new project, apply for a job, or even start a conversation with someone they admire. If they begin analyzing every possible mistake or rejection that could happen, they may never take the first step. Overthinking can quietly block opportunities.
Another interesting thing about overthinking is that it tends to amplify emotions. When you replay a negative memory again and again, the emotional impact becomes stronger each time. Instead of processing the experience and moving on, the mind keeps reopening the same mental file.
That reminds me of something psychologists often mention. The brain does not always distinguish between a real event and a vividly imagined one. So when you repeatedly think about something stressful, your body can respond as if it is happening right now.
Which explains why people feel physically tired after a long period of overthinking. Even though nothing happened externally, their mind has been running a marathon of thoughts.
Exactly. And the truth is, many people who overthink are actually very thoughtful and responsible individuals. They care deeply about making the right choices and avoiding harm. But without the right mental habits, that care can turn into constant worry.
So the goal is not to stop thinking altogether, because thinking is essential. The real goal is to develop a healthier relationship with our thoughts. We need to recognize when thinking is useful and when it is simply repeating itself without providing clarity.
That's a powerful distinction. Useful thinking leads to decisions and solutions, while overthinking keeps us trapped in uncertainty. Learning to recognize the difference can change the way we approach problems.
And the good news is that overthinking is not a permanent personality trait. It's a habit of the mind, and habits can be changed with awareness and practice. We talked about what overthinking looks like and how it can trap people in endless mental loops. Now, I think the next logical step is to understand why it happens in the first place. Because once we understand the triggers, we can start managing them more effectively. In my experience, one of the biggest triggers of overthinking is uncertainty. Human beings naturally want clarity and control. When we face situations where the outcome is unknown, the mind tries to compensate by analyzing every possible scenario.
That is very true. The mind almost behaves like a detective trying to solve a mystery, except the mystery often has no clear answer. When people face uncertainty, they start asking questions like, what if this goes wrong? Or what if I made the wrong decision? And the more they search for certainty, the deeper they fall into the cycle of overthinking.
Another major trigger is the fear of making mistakes. Many people grow up in environments where mistakes are treated as failures rather than learning experiences. Because of that, they start believing that every decision must be perfect. When perfection becomes the goal, the mind refuses to move forward until it feels completely confident, which almost never happens.
Yes, perfectionism is closely connected to overthinking. When someone believes that every choice must be flawless, they begin to examine every tiny detail. Instead of asking, is this a good decision? They ask, is this the perfect decision? That difference may sound small, but it creates enormous pressure.
And perfectionism can make even simple decisions feel overwhelming. Imagine someone trying to choose a career path or decide whether to start a business. If they believe there is only one perfect option, they might spend months or even years analyzing possibilities instead of taking action.
Another powerful trigger is past experiences. If someone has gone through a difficult situation or made a decision they later regretted, the mind becomes extra cautious. It starts replaying past events and tries to prevent the same mistake from happening again.
That is such an important point. The brain is constantly learning from previous experiences, but sometimes it learns the wrong lesson. Instead of understanding that mistakes are part of growth, it begins to assume that every decision is dangerous.
Exactly. And when that happens, people start treating normal life choices like high-risk situations. A simple conversation, sending an email, or expressing an opinion suddenly feels like something that must be analyzed for hours.
Social comparison is another major factor. In today's world, people constantly see images of success, confidence, and achievement. When someone compares their life to others, they may start questioning every decision they make. They think, am I doing enough? Or what if I fall behind everyone else?
Yes, comparison can easily lead to self-doubt. And once self-doubt enters the picture, overthinking usually follows. The mind begins searching for proof that it is capable, but instead it often finds reasons to worry.
Another trigger that many people overlook is the habit of imagining worst-case scenarios. Some individuals believe that if they prepare for the worst possible outcome, they will be emotionally protected. But instead of creating security, this habit increases anxiety.
That's true. The mind starts creating stories that have not happened yet. Someone might think, if I say the wrong thing, people will judge me. Or if I try something new, I might fail publicly. Even though those situations are only possibilities, the mind treats them as if they are real threats.
And the interesting thing is that the brain rarely imagines the best possible outcome with the same intensity. It focuses much more on potential problems.
That imbalance can create a very distorted perspective. When people only focus on what might go wrong, they start believing that negative outcomes are more likely than they actually are.
Exactly. And once that belief takes hold, every new situation becomes another reason to analyze and worry. It becomes a habit that runs automatically in the background of daily life.
There is also another trigger that I think deserves attention, and that is the constant flow of information in modern life. People are exposed to advice, opinions, and news from countless sources. While information can be helpful, too much of it can make decision-making extremely complicated.
That is a great observation. When people receive dozens of different opinions about what they should do, they may start questioning their own judgment. Instead of trusting themselves, they keep searching for more information, hoping that eventually they will feel certain.
But certainty rarely arrives through endless research. At some point, people have to trust their understanding and move forward. Otherwise, the search for the perfect answer becomes another form of overthinking.
When we look at all these triggers, uncertainty, perfectionism, past experiences, social comparison, worst-case thinking, and information overload, it becomes clear why overthinking is so common. Modern life provides plenty of fuel for it.
Yes, but recognizing these triggers is actually empowering. Once people can identify what is causing their overthinking, they can begin to interrupt the pattern. We explored many of the triggers that lead people into the cycle of overthinking, such as uncertainty, perfectionism, past experiences, comparison, and the habit of imagining worst-case scenarios. Once someone recognizes these triggers, the next step is learning how to respond to them differently. Because the truth is, we cannot completely stop thoughts from appearing in our minds. Thoughts arrive automatically. What we can change is the way we react to them.
That distinction is extremely important. Many people believe the solution is to force themselves to stop thinking about something, but the human mind rarely works that way. If you try to push a thought away aggressively, it often returns with even greater intensity. Instead of fighting thoughts, a healthier approach is to observe them with a little distance.
Exactly. Think of your thoughts like passing clouds in the sky. Some clouds are light and pleasant, while others are dark and heavy. But no matter what they look like, they eventually move on. The problem begins when we grab onto those clouds and refuse to let them pass.
That is a beautiful metaphor. When someone overthinks, they tend to treat every thought as if it must be analyzed immediately. If a small doubt appears, they start questioning it, expanding it, and building an entire story around it. Before long, one simple thought turns into a complicated mental drama.
And often that drama has very little connection to reality. For example, someone might send a message to a colleague and then start thinking, what if I sounded rude? Then the mind adds another layer. Maybe they are upset with me. And soon the person is imagining a conflict that does not even exist.
Exactly. The mind has a powerful imagination, and when overthinking takes control, imagination begins to replace evidence. That is why one of the most helpful mental shifts is learning to question the accuracy of your thoughts.
Right. Instead of immediately believing every thought, we can pause and ask a simple question. Is this thought actually based on facts, or is it just an assumption? That small moment of reflection can prevent the mind from spiraling into unnecessary worry.
Another helpful strategy is to recognize that not every thought requires a response. Some thoughts are just mental noise. The brain produces thousands of thoughts every day, and many of them are random or repetitive. If we reacted seriously to every single one, we would be exhausted.
That is so true. Imagine if someone treated every passing thought like an urgent message. Their entire day would become a constant cycle of analysis and concern. Learning to let certain thoughts pass without engagement can be incredibly freeing.
I also think it is helpful to remember that thoughts are not predictions of the future. Many people overthink because they believe their worries are warnings. They think, if I am worrying about this, it must mean something bad will happen.
But in reality, worry is not the same as intuition. Intuition tends to feel calm and clear, while overthinking feels chaotic and repetitive. One provides direction, while the other creates confusion.
Exactly. Overthinking often sounds like a loud conversation inside the mind, where multiple voices are arguing with each other. One voice says, you should do this, while another voice says, no, that could be a mistake. And the debate continues without reaching any real conclusion.
Another important shift is understanding that uncertainty is a natural part of life. Many people overthink because they want absolute certainty before making a decision, but the truth is that certainty rarely exists. Most meaningful choices involve some level of risk.
That is a great point. If people wait for complete certainty, they may spend years analyzing decisions that could have been made in a single day. Progress often requires the willingness to move forward even when the outcome is not guaranteed.
And when people accept that uncertainty is normal, the pressure to overanalyze every possibility begins to fade. Instead of trying to eliminate all risk, they focus on making the best decision with the information they currently have.
Another helpful mindset is viewing mistakes as opportunities for learning rather than proof of failure. When people are afraid of making mistakes, they feel compelled to analyze every detail repeatedly. But if mistakes are seen as part of growth, decisions become less intimidating.
Yes, and that mindset creates a sense of freedom. Instead of thinking, I must make the perfect decision, people can think, I will make a thoughtful decision and learn from the result. That perspective removes a lot of unnecessary pressure.
And interestingly, people who accept the possibility of mistakes often make better decisions because they are not paralyzed by fear. They are able to act, observe the outcome, and adjust their approach over time.
Exactly. Overthinking tends to keep people stuck in their heads, while healthy thinking encourages movement and experimentation. Life is not meant to be solved entirely in theory. Sometimes clarity only appears after we take action.
We talked about changing our relationship with our thoughts, but now I think it would be really helpful to focus on practical habits people can apply in their everyday lives to reduce overthinking. Because understanding the concept intellectually is one thing, but building habits that calm the mind is what truly makes a difference.
I completely agree. One of the most effective habits for reducing overthinking is learning to create mental pauses throughout the day. Many people move from one activity to another without ever giving their minds a moment to reset. When the brain is constantly processing information, it becomes easier for worries and repetitive thoughts to take control.
That's a great point. Something as simple as taking a few quiet minutes during the day can help create space between thoughts. When people slow down and focus on their breathing or simply observe their surroundings, it gives the mind an opportunity to step out of that constant cycle of analysis.
Another very helpful habit is writing down your thoughts. When worries remain inside the mind, they often feel bigger and more complicated than they actually are. But when someone writes those thoughts on paper, they begin to see them more clearly.
Yes, journaling can be incredibly powerful. When thoughts are written down, the brain shifts from emotional thinking to more structured thinking. Suddenly, the problem that felt overwhelming begins to look more manageable.
Exactly. And sometimes people realize that the same worries keep repeating themselves again and again. That awareness alone can help them understand that they are stuck in a mental loop rather than solving a real problem.
Another habit that helps reduce overthinking is setting time limits for decision-making. Many people spend far too much time trying to evaluate every possible option. But if someone decides in advance that they will make a choice within a certain amount of time, it prevents endless analysis.
That's such a practical strategy. For example, someone might give themselves 30 minutes to research a decision and then commit to choosing an option. This approach encourages progress rather than perfection.
And speaking of perfection, it is also helpful to adopt what I like to call the good enough mindset. Instead of searching for the perfect solution, people can focus on making a decision that is reasonable and thoughtful. In many situations, that is more than sufficient.
Yes, because perfection often exists only in theory. In real life, decisions are rarely perfect, but they can still be effective. When people accept that reality, the pressure to overanalyze every possibility begins to disappear.
Physical movement is another powerful tool for calming an overactive mind. When someone is stuck in their thoughts, engaging in physical activity can shift their focus from mental noise to physical awareness.
Absolutely. Whether it is walking, exercising, or even doing simple tasks around the house, movement can interrupt the cycle of repetitive thinking. The body and the mind are deeply connected, so when the body moves, the mind often becomes clearer.
I also think it is important to limit excessive information consumption. Many people spend hours reading opinions, advice, and news updates, believing that more information will bring clarity. But sometimes it only creates more confusion.
That's very true. At some point, gathering more information stops being helpful and starts becoming another form of procrastination. Instead of endlessly searching for answers, people need to trust their ability to think and decide.
Another habit that helps is practicing gratitude and focusing on what is going well in life. Overthinking tends to highlight problems and uncertainties, but gratitude shifts attention toward positive experiences.
Yes, and that shift in perspective can change the emotional tone of someone's entire day. When people regularly acknowledge what is working in their lives, they create a mental environment that is less dominated by worry.
Ultimately, reducing overthinking is about balance. The mind is an incredibly powerful tool,
but it works best when it is not overloaded with constant analysis.
As we reach the final part of this conversation, I think it is important to talk about long-term mental clarity. Overcoming overthinking is not something that happens overnight. It is a gradual process that involves building trust in your own judgment and developing confidence in your ability to handle life's uncertainties.
That's such an important idea. Many people believe they need to eliminate every doubt before they can feel confident. But confidence actually grows from taking action despite uncertainty. Each time someone makes a decision and learns from the outcome, their trust in themselves becomes stronger.
Exactly. Confidence is built through experience, not through endless analysis. When people allow themselves to take action, even small actions, they begin to realize that they are capable of adapting to whatever results appear.
Another important factor is self-compassion. People who overthink often place extremely high expectations on themselves. They believe they must always make the best choices and avoid mistakes. But treating yourself with understanding rather than harsh judgment can reduce a lot of unnecessary mental pressure.
Yes, self-compassion changes the inner conversation people have with themselves. Instead of saying, "I cannot believe I made that mistake," they can say, "I learned something valuable from that experience." That simple shift can transform the way someone views challenges.
It is also helpful to remember that life is not meant to be completely predictable. Uncertainty is not a flaw in the system, it is part of the human experience. Some of the most meaningful opportunities appear when people step into situations where the outcome is not fully known.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. When people stop trying to control every possible outcome, they become more open to growth and discovery. Overthinking tends to shrink life into a series of cautious calculations, while clarity allows life to expand.
Another key aspect of long-term clarity is focusing on what truly matters. When people align their decisions with their values and priorities, many smaller worries lose their importance. Instead of questioning every minor detail, they focus on the bigger direction of their lives.
Exactly. When someone knows what they stand for and what they want to contribute to the world, decisions become simpler. The mind does not need to analyze every tiny possibility because the overall path is already clear.
And perhaps one of the most powerful realizations is that the mind becomes calmer when it is engaged in meaningful action. When people focus on learning, creating, helping others, or pursuing meaningful goals, their attention naturally shifts away from endless internal analysis.
Yes, purpose has a way of organizing the mind. Instead of drifting through countless hypothetical scenarios, the mind begins to concentrate on real experiences and meaningful progress.
So if we bring this entire conversation together, overcoming overthinking involves several key steps. It begins with recognizing the patterns of overthinking, understanding the triggers behind it, changing the way we respond to our thoughts, building practical habits that calm the mind, and finally, developing confidence through action and experience.
And the encouraging truth is that anyone can begin this process. It does not require extraordinary talent or special circumstances. It simply requires awareness, patience, and the willingness to practice healthier ways of thinking.
Exactly. Over time, those small changes can create a significant transformation in the way someone experiences life.
Thank you all for spending this time with us and being part of this thoughtful conversation.
If you enjoyed this discussion and want to hear more conversations like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel Speak and Feel English for more videos and podcasts.
And we look forward to sharing many more meaningful conversations with you in future episodes. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and take care of your mind.